There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Be a movie, yeah, we're gonna be a movie,
Starring everybody
and me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Be a movie, we can watch it all develop, starring everybody
and me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in. We're gonna start right here.
And we are going to start right here. Hello, welcome to another edition of the 411 Summer Blockbuster Series. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified and I'm exhausted, I have to be honest with you, Mr. Mark Radulich. And we are tonight going to discuss, hands down, the best movie of the summer, bar none, Pacific Rim. An extra big movie with giant monsters, humongous robots, and because of the sheer enormity of this movie and the cast therein, I brought on not one but two people to talk about it with me. First, as he always is, for the past couple of movie reviews, he's back again, Mr. Jeff Harris from the Movie Zone and the MMA Zone. How you do, sir?
I'm here to cancel the apocalypse, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right.
And I'm all out of apocalypse. Cancellation.
Nice. And my good buddy from the 411 Music Zone and the formerly known as 411 Music Zone podcast, now the Hammer of Doom podcast, Mr. Robert Cooper. How you doing, sir?
See, I was going to cancel the apocalypse, but since he's already doing that, I guess I'm going to go back to building the wall.
That is, of course, a reference to the movie, which we will get to shortly. All right. Jeff, I want to go to you first, and the first thing I always ask you is, did you enjoy the movie? Clearly you enjoyed the movie. That would be redundant if I asked. So I'm going to ask you a different question. You're a games expert, and granted, so is Robert Cooper, but am I wrong? Wasn't Pacific Rim an actual video game first? Because I haven't been able to find...
No, it was not. You are wrong.
So
I have no problem pointing that out, Mark.
No, you love it when I'm wrong. But okay, I could have sworn, and I'll leave it alone after this, but I could have sworn Pacific Rim started out its life as a video game that they were basing this movie on. And this is just the wild imagination of Guillermo del Toro?
Originally, it was the screenwriter Travis Beacham's pitch. It was his story idea, but then he co-wrote the final product with Guillermo del Toro. But it is this all came from the mind of Travis Beacham, of course, inspired by the subgenres of Japanese monster movies and tokukatsu and mecha projects. That's what makes this so exciting to me. This is one of the few movies of the summer that's not really based on anything. This is an original script. It's not a prequel. It's not a sequel. It's not a reboot, a reimagining, or any kind of requel. This is all done from scratch, and we haven't seen enough movies like this. We don't see movies like this, period, really. We don't really see original movies at all anymore. Everything's based on something. It's based on a book or a fantasy series or something, or a video game, or a toy line, or a theme park ride, or something esoteric.
Or a board game.
This was all from scratch, guys. How many movies like that can you... So I guess maybe This Is the End, but that's like all, that's a comedy. But how many big summer movies like this can you say that about this summer?
No, I would agree. I would agree. The big summer blockbusters always take a known brand of some kind and throw a new, spit shine and a three-piece suit on them, or reboot them or whatever. So you're absolutely right. We are treated really not to a new idea. The idea of a monster wrecking a city is not particularly new. This was a fun take on it, and certainly I have no quibbles with the way that it was done. But I wouldn't necessarily say it was a new idea. Did either one of you notice? Now, all right, hang on. Let me say this before we continue. We are going to have a discussion about this movie, which will involve spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, quick turn the podcast off, go see the movie, and come back. Okay, real quick. just yes or no. Robert Cooper, did you ever see the movie Independence Day?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes or no? Did you ever see, Jeffrey Harris, did you ever see the movie Independence Day?
Only about 20 times in the theaters.
Fantastic. So I'll go to Jeff first, then Robert. Did you notice there were a lot of elements in this movie that were, if not derived from, were eerily similar to Independence Day? And that's not a complaint. It's an observation that when I was done with this, I was like, there's a lot of things that reminded me of Independence Day in that movie. Did you happen to pick that up, Mr. Harris?
Yes, of course, and yeah. I don't think I don't know if it was necessarily intentional or not, but I think that's kind of, we don't really see movies like Independence Day anymore either. And, you know, Independence Day, for all its flaws, was like, at the time, it was the perfect summer experience.
And of course, what I'm talking about, they don't really show you them until the very end. But but what they discover, I'm kind of telling this story out of reverse, out of order here. But when they finally figure out what where the Gaiju are coming from, who are the monsters? Kaiju. Who are the monsters? It's that they're actually beasts sent from an alien race to destroy the Earth so that the aliens can take it over and steal its resources and then move on to another planet, which is exactly what the plot line and the evil plan was for the aliens, who look just like them in Independence Day. It was wreck the Earth, destroy humanity, take the resources, and move on. Robert Cooper, what do you think about that? I find it fascinating that when writers and creative people sit around and try to figure out why an alien race might attack the Earth, they come to, like 10, 20 years apart, they come to the exact same conclusion, the exact same story.
Well, actually, I didn't get the references to Independence Day at first because I really wasn't thinking about Independence Day, but now that you mention it, yes, I definitely did see that. And I also love the fact that it was a real love letter to Tokusatsu and Mecha Anime, which I love both a lot. So, loved it. But as for the plot line that they had, yeah, I can see how it wasn't fully original because, yeah, that is what the aliens in Independence Day did. I almost feel like that it's not like it's been done so much that it really was like, that's Independence Day, it's nothing special. Just as Jeff said, they're not, or what's it Jeff said? I think Jeff said that not many movies like Independence Day like this are really coming out anymore. So, the fact that it took this long for a movie to really copy, or more or less copy elements from the Independence Day story and do it right, I'd say that's a good thing.
Well, even Independence Day, those elements weren't exactly original to that own story. Look at War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
That's why the aliens were invading in War of the Worlds, and when did that book come? When did that original book by H.G. Wells come out?
It's a fascinating thing in our culture that I can't come up with another reason it's given that an alien race is trying to destroy the Earth. It's always that one, and I'm just fascinated by that you see this in so many other different mediums. Let's get back to the movie in and of itself.
War of the Worlds came out in 1898, so Independence Day copied something from an 1898 book.
Yes, there you go. Jeff, what did you think of the special effects in this? I thought they were pretty seamless. One of my big complaints about movies like Transformers, and I think you mentioned this in your review, which very good review. Check it out on the Movie Zone. Jeff Harris's review of Pacific Rim. Was that while on the one hand the stuff looks pretty sharp, on the other it's very hard to follow the action, especially because in Transformers everything just the robots all kind of look the same. There weren't like in the cartoon. They're different colors. It's a little easier to follow, obviously, a lot easier to follow. But in the movie, it's just stuff is happening, and you're just bombarded with stuff going on, and it's hard to follow who's winning the fight. In this one, obviously, because you have a robot and a monster, it's a little bit different. I actually thought they did a very, very good job of keeping things crisp enough so that you could follow the action. But just in general, speak to the special effects. What did you think of them?
Okay, well, just to be clear, I saw the movie twice. I saw it at the pre-screening. It was the 3D IMAX version. And then I saw it again over the weekend in regular 2D digital. I got to be honest, I preferred it in 2D. Now, the 3D IMAX version, while parts of it were very immersive and really did pop out, other times it was just too much of a bombardment, and it just got hard for me to just see and take everything in. I like the 2D version a little more just because that's how Del Toro envisioned this movie. It's how he shot the movie, and to me it just looked better. I could see everything within the image a lot better. I could make out everything better. What I loved about the effects, and it kind of annoys me that I won't say idiots, but the writers at Variety are harping about this movie right now, about how, oh my God, how could Guillermo del Toro make a monster movie? How could the director of Pan's Labyrinth and The Devil's Backbone make something so crass and blah blah blah, like film snobs? And they complained about how everything's set at night, how there's water and rain, blah blah blah. I think that just makes everything look better. For one thing, it gives texture to the image. And Guillermo del Toro, what he talked about, he wanted to convey this image of when these big behemoths were moving, that they're kind of like causing disturbances in the atmosphere. So all the rain and the particle effects, it's sort of like these behemoths, like they're disturbing like the atmosphere and nature itself. And I like that because it made it look like these kaijus were just literally like the character Raleigh Beckett, the main character. At the beginning of the movie, he talks like, when I'm in a Jaeger, I feel like it makes you feel like you can run to the hurricane and fight it. So to me, it was almost like these were forces of nature just clashing, like nature was coming to life and just literally beating the hell out of each other. So the effects gave that great image. ILM did tremendous work on the creatures. They looked fantastic. They didn't just look huge, but they felt huge. They felt like massive, like they had this great sense of scale and weight, which a lot of movies with big special effects, they look and feel fake. And when I say feel, it's just because you don't have a connection like they're really there. These really felt like they were there because they felt like through the whole atmosphere of the sound effects and the visual effects, you got this sense of weight and scale from the kaiju, which is what I loved. And that's why I thought the kaiju looked so great.
Robert, what did you think of the Jaegers? They spent a lot of time talking about how the Jaegers work and what they were and sort of their evolution, even little things like Idris Elba's character having to deal with radiation poisoning, and because of he has a line in there, and it's not a throwaway line. It's he just kind of blurts it out there, but it explains so much about what's going on with him, with his character. It's like, we put the original Jaegers together in 14 months. These bad boys together in 14 months. We certainly weren't thinking about radiation shields, explaining why he's bleeding from the nose and stuff. So, we spend so much time getting to know inanimate objects, basically, the Jaegers. What did you think of their presentation in the movie, and what was sort of your reaction to how much time was spent just dealing with how they worked?
The first time I saw Gypsy Danger on the screen, I don't want to say my jaw totally dropped, my mouth just opened, and I was just like, this is so beautiful. Because, like I said, I love giant robots, love tokusatsu, love anime. So seeing something that's pretty comparable to a lot of the things I really grew up with watching as a child, and I watch now, it just blew my mind, and it just looks so beautiful. Now, spending time on the Jaegers I thought was a very good thing, because really you didn't have many Jaegers to deal with once you got towards the end. Now, if we would have went through that whole 5-year gap in between Raleigh and his brother going kaput and when Raleigh's picked off the wall, then maybe it would have been a little harder to tell tell apart the Jaegers, but I really loved the designs of all of them. Like Chernobyl looked like something that they would slap together in 14 months. It looked like a damn nuclear reactor with arms and legs, which maybe is saying something because it's Russian. But I really felt like that design was great. It really said something of, okay, we need to build this fast. Let's get this bitch on the road. Crimson Thunder? Is that what it was? The 3-armed one?
Crimson Typhoon.
Okay, Crimson Typhoon, yeah.
That was the Chinese Jaeger.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the design of that. I thought it was really neat that they had triplets, so it had an extra arm. And I also liked the fact that they hyped up that Typhoon, like the Typhoon tornado formation, where they do the thing with the blades and everything. I thought that was very, very interesting. I love the fact that they built it up. I also love the fact that they built up the Chernobyl team. And when we get to their demise, I'll tell you how I felt about that. Now, the Australian, but I totally forget the name. I'm bad with names sometimes.
Stryker Eureka.
Okay. Yeah, Stryker. Yeah, I'm just bad with names. But yeah, Stryker, I love the design. You could tell it was much more advanced than the rest of them because it had this stuff like the chest rockets and it moved really fast. Yeah, I really dug that. You could tell it was more advanced, just the fact that it moved, and it felt like maybe it hit harder. I don't know if it's
they called Stryker Eureka. It was the last generation of the Jaegers. It was the Mach 5. Cherno Alpha was a first generation Mach 1. So it's kind of like, they kind of classified everything almost like the iPhones,
Yeah, it's you're looking at the Chernobyl was like the 512, iPod Shuffle. We're looking at Stryker's freaking iPhone 5. Yeah, it was the first and last fifth generation Jaeger because they could shut the production literally right after the last bolt went in. I really dug that, and then we get to the the quote unquote star of the movie, Gypsy Danger, which I really love that design. I love that glowing chest piece. Kind of did remind me of the whole Iron Man thing with the glowing chest piece. I like that. I love the lasers that it had. I thought that was really cool. That was something you didn't see in the rest of them. The rest of them was more conventional stuff with blades, and they did have a sword and they had rockets, but you didn't really see anything you would see in more of an anime or tokusatsu, something that's a little more fantastic with the lasers, because you didn't really expect to see that right off. I thought that was really cool. I love the swords too, though I do wonder why they didn't bring the swords out earlier. Maybe that was because Mako was the only one that really knew they were there. I don't know, but I just love.
I'll tell you why, Robert, because that scene when Otachi is taking them into the atmosphere and we're out of options, and then no, we don't. We got sword, and then when we actually see the sword midway through the movie, and it freaking slices up Otachi, the Otachi kaiju, I freaking freaked out. I stood up in my chair and I started clapping. I was like, yeah, that's why they waited to show the sword. You got to save your money shots. If you do the money shot at the beginning, then you're like, fuck, what else can we show?
All right, now within the universe,
later, man.
Within the universe of the movie, I think the explanation was the Gypsy Danger had undergone some enhancements during the 5 years that it was decommissioned, so he doesn't know it's there. And why she waited to bring it up was, because I thought about that too, and I thought about that because I remember watching the movie and people yelling out, "Why didn't you start with that?" So that was really funny. But my explanation, look, they make a point of saying that Rinko Kikuchi, who plays the character, who plays Mori. Look, she's got a lot of stuff going on. This is her very first time. She's sort of a trial by fire here. And I don't know if either one of you have ever been in war, but you're not always going to be, you're not always going to be thinking about all of your options immediately with a cool head. Sometimes you just, they're just kind of, they just rush out in there. They're thrown into this situation, and she kind of thinks about it when they didn't have a whole lot of other options, and she's reminded, oh wait, we have this one last weapon that we need. Which it's sort of it's a quibble, and it definitely made for a very dramatic conclusion to that fight. But you have to kind of stretch a little bit to to rationalize why they did it that way. Dramatically, that's right. But within the universe of the movie, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. Go ahead and finish up, Robert, and then I want to ask Jeff a question.
You can definitely justify that just by looking at the tokusatsu influences. Power Rangers. Why don't they use their finisher at the beginning of the fight? Why don't they stomp them with a Megazord? Stuff like that. Yeah, when it comes to like giant robots and stuff, if they just blow up the damn monster in 15 seconds, yeah, that really does just kind of ruin the atmosphere.
Not a lot of dramatic tension.
No. The only time that ever works is if your name is Harrison Ford and there's a guy with a scimitar. It's the only time that will work. But otherwise, I really just feel like you're right. Y'all are right. It really is just the fact that they really did need to build up the tension, and it really did work because when those swords came out, I was like, "That is so awesome."
It was a good fun moment. Jeff, one of the things that I really enjoyed about this movie was it didn't make war look like a video game. It didn't make, the seriousness of war, whether you do it with, a realistic version or, monsters running amok in your planet. It didn't glorify it. On the other hand, it didn't necessarily, it wasn't preachy, it wasn't, sort of a anti-Vietnam type movie where they just beat you over the head with war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. So I want you to respond to what I'm about to read you. This is from the Wikipedia page. It says, Del Toro, a self-described pacifist, avoided what he termed car commercial aesthetics or army recruitment video aesthetics, and he gave the characters Western ranks, including Marshal and Ranger, rather than military ranks such as Captain, Major, or General. The director stated, I avoided making any kind of message that says war is good. We have enough firepower in the world. Del Toro wanted to break from the mass death and destruction featured in contemporary blockbuster films and made a point of showing the streets and buildings being evacuated before kaiju attacks and ensuring that the destruction depicted is completely remorseless. The director stated, I don't want people being crushed. I want the joy that I used to get seeing Godzilla toss a tank without having to think there are guys in that tank. What I think you could do is nothing but echo the moment you're in. There was a global anxiety about how fragile the status quo is and the safety of citizens. But in my mind, honestly, the film is another realm. There is no correlation to the real world. There is no fear of the copycat kaiju attack because kaiju saw it on the news and said, I'm going to destroy Seattle. In my case, I'm picking up a tradition. One started right after World War II and was a coping mechanism in a way for Japan to heal the wounds of that war. And it's integral for a kaiju to rampage in the city. How do you respond to that?
I love Guillermo del Toro. I think he's a great storyteller. I think he's a little full of shit, but I agree with him that it's fiction. You got to have fun. I did like that they were kind of that Marshall talked about evacuating the city, and we saw people going to public refuges and all that. I find it hard to believe they would be able to evacuate a city. We're talking about Hong Kong here. Even if the world's been debilitated by a war with these primal creatures called kaiju, you still have a highly populated city, and I imagine there had to be some amount of collateral damage in those fights. But I did at least like the attempt that we saw. They were trying to, the military was trying to evacuate civilians and send civilians to safety. But in a movie like this, you have to sort of embrace that you have a military force fighting kaiju. This is a fight for survival. And the reason I think that argument's a little weird because at the same time, you want to see, the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps kick ass and win, So I don't know if it has that effect that Del Toro wants. I know the movie didn't do great business this weekend, but whatever. I'm not a big Jane Fonda liberal. I'm a fairly conservative guy. I'm not ultra right-wing conservative, but I don't really even know what I'm saying now, but I don't really agree with Del Toro, but I do agree with the idea that it's fiction and you have to see these monsters kind of causing rampage and destruction.
Well, I think when you're deciding that you're going to look, we've seen dozens and dozens of movies where directors decide they're going to wreck the country, the planet, etc. And there's different ways you can handle it. You can wreck a city and show the after effects of the city being wrecked, and it can be kind of a downer. I think one of the, my wife asked me, she's like, why do you like the summer movie so much? I said, because it's just a glorious celebration of excess. It's for 2 hours I can turn my brain off and watch stuff blow up, and I don't have to think about the ramifications of such events. And so I think what Del Toro was trying to get at with this movie was, look, here's sort of an ode to an old idea, an idea that came out after World War II of, giant lizards attacking cities and such, and and then being beaten off with giant robots. And that's fine. And we don't want, and while we need to make it we need to make sure that there are stakes in the game and that there are ramifications. You don't want to be taken so far out of the fun of the movie that you're like, oh, this is depressing. Lots of people just got destroyed. I remember watching the Half in the Bag review of Man of Steel, and they really got on the directors, and this is something that Jeff and I talked about in our review of that, where suddenly the city just seems deserted, and they're having this huge fight scene, they're destroying Metropolis, and there's not another human being in sight. I thought there was a good balance there, and I think above all, you want to make sure you're having fun with this. This isn't supposed to be a documentary on the Holocaust here. Robert, any last words here on sort of the idea of trying to keep that balance between fun, but you're still showing what is essentially a war in the middle, as a story, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I tell you, the one thing I have to go back to is I'm going to keep bringing up Power Rangers because that's my forte. That's what I grew up with, and it's so far out of Mark's.
Boy, you're showing your age.
Dude, I'm 21.
Fair enough.
That cut me some slack. But there's there's always been a question. The show's been going for 20 years, and there's only once that they've brought up, because in that show, it's, you got to show the monsters fucking something up, so they destroy the city, and it's never really brought up what the hell happens. And there was only once that they did, and they're like, oh, the good thing they just attacked the abandoned warehouse district.
I remember that episode.
Oh, see, Jeff knows what I'm talking about. He's cool.
Yeah, but that's like 21.
Look, I'm not like these film snobs at Variety who are like, this is like Power Rangers on acid. My reaction to that is, hey, what the frack is wrong with Power Rangers? Power Rangers is cool. You shut up, snobby film critic.
Yeah, I compared this movie pretty much. I said it's Ultraman mixed with Transformers, and you tripled the IQ.
There's nothing wrong with those things. No,
I love them.
Those films, those TV shows, they are classics. They are classics in their own right. Power Rangers to this day is still a phenomenon. We're 20 years later, and they're still making new Power Rangers. Yep. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I think that's good. And for to do a movie like this of this scale, to do something that to me this kind of was in some way. It was like a big budget Power Ranger giant monster movie. Yeah. And that's awesome. Legendary, they're doing a new Godzilla movie right now. We're about to do a Godzilla thing at Comic-Con, which I'm going to be covering later this week. Legendary has invited us to a special exclusive VIP tour of a Godzilla thing they're doing this week.
Ooh, cool.
Are we supposed to deny what Godzilla is? The original Godzilla is a classic, and these film snobs at Variety are like, oh, we like Pan's Labyrinth because it's artsy and dramatic. Shut up. Godzilla is a classic in its own right. Steven Spielberg says Gojira is one of his favorite movies ever. So there you go.
Jeff, I want to stay with you for just go ahead, finish, Robert, and then I want to get back to Jeff for just one question.
Yeah, I totally do agree with that. I don't know what the critics who are, a lot of them are shitting on it. I don't know why. I've been arguing with my mom about that all week. She goes, "Oh, I heard it was shitty." I'm like, nah, I loved it. But I don't know why there's a lot of people expecting, like, "Oh, this is Pan's Labyrinth, so I'm going to bitch." I mean, if you saw, like, 2 seconds of any of the trailers, it's not going to be Pan's Labyrinth. It is more or less, like I said, it's you're mixing the kaiju from Ultraman. I'm sure Mark remembers that because he's old. You mix the kaiju from Ultraman, and then you mix kind of the robot action, but more realistic. Take that from Transformers without the confusing hullabaloo, and that's what you get. But the fact is that I think a lot of people are missing. No, this is not A Beautiful Mind. This is not like, something super thought-provoking. But they do a good job with what they have. It is a giant blockbuster movie, but it does have a brain. They managed to do what almost every other giant robot movie, and monster movie, really has wanted to do that's been released in the U.S. They actually made a movie where shit blows up, and there's monsters and robots, but it's intelligent, it's smart. And I think just so many people are missing that because they can't get past the fact that they're not getting some fucking art house movie.
I mean, I actually like that I agree, Cooper. It's smart because I like that I know for a fact, I mean, we also interviewed the screenwriter, Travis Beecham. They created like a whole universe and backstory for this entire world. There's this whole storyline about the Jaegers and how they were created. We got hints of it in the movie, that controlling something this massive, the human mind cannot process it. So you needed two minds together to link this in order to carry the load of basically controlling these things. And there's a whole even further backstory for that. So that's where I think the smart thing comes in, that they actually thought about, how these things work, how they're controlled, how they had to make them. Mark, you referenced earlier how they talked about when this war first started, they basically scrapped the Mach 1s together in like a year, and they were powered by nuclear reactors, so they weren't really thinking that hard about. They were just thinking, okay, we're being attacked by giant monsters. We have to do something. We need to fight back. They didn't think about shielding themselves from the radiation from nuclear reactors,
Right.
That's where I think the smart aspect that Robert Cooper is talking about comes in.
Well, just to play on that for a moment, I actually think they did a very, very good job of keeping a human element to the story and remembering that, movies have to have characters in them, not caricatures. And I think they, this wasn't Starship Troopers. Y'all remember that movie from a few years back? That piece of trash.
That movie. I hate that movie.
That's my point. Hate
that movie.
They focused on the drift and the whole, the whole concept of minds coming together and people being in each other's memories and minds and all of that. And that gave you an opportunity to get to know the characters. You didn't just have Idris Elba, barking around, making sure that everyone, bottled up the heroin appropriately. Sorry, that was The Wire. You had it wasn't just Idris Elba just running around barking orders at people. You didn't have, a potshot pilot running around going, "I have a need for speed." These were real characters. And that's what makes the movie work. You have to find that balance of having characters that are interesting, that you want to watch for 2 hours and root for and see change over the course of time in a movie, and not just be, guys, doing stuff on film. And the mechanism for doing that in a movie like this, to make time for it, was they spent a lot of time focusing on the drift. I want to pull away from this for just a moment and ask you, Jeff. I'm looking at the weekend box office. Despicable Me 2 came in at number 1. Weekend gross was $43,892,000. Grown Ups 2, which I have no interest in. Easy, googly. $41,508,000, and then Pacific Rim came in at number 3 at $37,285,000.
Why we don't serve nice things, America.
Well, that's exactly what I said.
It still has not. It still has not made over budget, it looks like. I'm just wondering, Jeff, you spend a lot of time reviewing films and sort of working in that industry, at least from a journalist point of view. What do you think is the reason people didn't latch onto this in a summer that gave us Man of Steel, Iron Man, and other movies where, giant aliens wreck the place?
I'll tell you why. And I kind of had these concerns when the project was first announced, and I guess my concern was that this was basically a $200 million movie, and even though the general public likes giant monster movies, doing something like giant robots, basically this was basically a big budget mecha anime movie done as a Hollywood movie, and it's sort of it's basically an obscure subgenre, and it's not something we've really seen Hollywood do. We've seen Transformers, but that was giant robots, and that was a popular American toy line, granted based on Japanese toys that Hasbro got from Japan, that they made sort of a whole story around. But this is very different from Transformers as well. And I think the other thing was, I think the marketing, I think the trailers were kind of too sporadic. I think the other problem was Warner Brothers didn't really know how to market this movie. I think there was too much emphasis on the slam bang action, and we didn't get to know about the cool characters in the movie. The other problem with the movie is the movie has no stars or big names. All of these actors, they're good actors, but they're mostly TV people. Idris Elba, he's done some movies before, but he's not a box office draw. He's not a big movie star. His big claim to fame was Stringer Bell in The Wire. He's really, a TV guy trying to break it in to the movies. Charlie Hunnam, he's done a couple movies, but he's a star of Sons of Anarchy. Rinko Kikuchi, she's more of, she was featured in some indie dramas that were prolific in the U.S. So you don't have any big names. You have Charlie Day, again, another TV guy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So that was going against the movie. There were no big names or big stars attached to the movie. It's not a pre-existing property. It's not a sequel. It's not a reboot, a remake, or anything. It's an original story, new characters. So that it had that going against it as well. It's almost like you need to be a sequel or some sort of pre-existing brand these days. The other problem is, and this is very interesting to me, this movie signals the end of Legendary Pictures, the financier and co-producer of the movie. This signals the end of their distribution deal with Warner Brothers, who was the distributor of this movie. So this is the last movie Warner Brothers is releasing from Legendary Entertainment. Legendary Entertainment financed 75% of the movie. Warner Brothers, of course, distributed it and released it, which is, of course, a separate matter entirely. I read a report that said, only a couple weeks before the release, that Warner Brothers, for whatever reason, had not spent 70% of the marketing budget for this movie. Now, I got to be honest, I'm not like a conspiracy nut or anything, but I have the feeling that Warner Brothers did not put their best foot forward with Pacific Rim because I think they were, okay, this is our last movie with Legendary, we're kind of parting ways, I got the feeling that we're seeing like a bad breakup here, like a bad breakup in a relationship, and I got the same sense with Captain America and Paramount as well. Captain America, the First Avengers, was the last Marvel Studios movie that Paramount Pictures released, and I got the sense that they were not as invested in the movie as they were with the Iron Man films, because all these movies are going back to a competitor, so they're not getting any of that money. That money isn't going back.
They don't have a tremendous amount of.
Warner Brothers did not put their best foot forward with the movie. I think the movie did not with the marketing, they didn't aim enough to younger kids. And I think a lot of it's the fault on Warner Brothers and the people who were marketing the film. But none of this is an exact science. Movies that I think are going to bomb are sometimes huge hits. Movies that I think are going to do great don't do great. There's never an exact science to this sometimes, in what you think what movies will do well or won't do well.
Yep, I was gonna say they don't have a tremendous amount of incentive to make sure this movie succeeds beyond paying for itself, because it's going to a competitor, and you don't want to send the competitor off with a on a better footing than you had. So it's understandable. I think Despicable Me 2. I understand. Despicable Me 2. People really love the Minions. The first one was very successful. It's a family movie. I mean, we took my kid to go see it this past weekend, so I can understand why that one might be the weekend winner, because when your audience is everyone on Earth, I can imagine it doing pretty well. Why Grown Ups 2 beat Pacific Rim is beyond me. Robert Cooper, any thoughts on that?
It's a dumb comedy starring some guys that have some name value, even if Adam Sandler's a little iffy. Kevin James still does pretty decent blockbuster, but what I've seen, David Spade, he's David Spade. Chris Rock, he's funny. We remember him. So I honestly think that this was just like, everybody's like, oh, I want to go see a good comedy, and then they got this. I actually was bitching. I know you saw it on Facebook. I was bitching about the fact that Grown Ups 2 beat it, and then one of my friends was like, oh, I see you're saying what nobody is thinking. I'm like, fuck you. Because I don't understand. Like, I can understand wanting to see a dumb comedy, but there's a certain point where, like, Grown Ups 2, like, one I heard was not that good. I didn't see it for myself, never cared to. But I'm just surprised they went back to the well with this. Then again, I shouldn't, because Adam Sandler footed frickin' Jack and Jill. That was great. That, and I think it also goes back to what we were talking about with as I know Marcus heard on the Three Beers, we were talking about Pacific Rim and the fact that we haven't seen much marketing for it. This was about 2 weeks before. Like my friend Fletcher, he hadn't seen any trailers in theaters, and he goes to a lot of movies. He didn't see any trailers in theaters. I told him I haven't seen many commercials until like the past 2 weeks. Like, you saw some internet stuff, but I think people on the internet usually, if they're interested in robots and monsters, they're going to go see it anyways. The internet's not really the audience I think you need to look for with this. I think you need to go more towards the more mainstream, because you're going to get the nerdier audience usually just on precedent because of the fact that it looks like a good movie. And it was really hard to market, because I went with my stepdad, and he was like, this movie was a lot better than I thought, because I thought it was going to be something like Transformers, because the marketing that they did have really didn't utilize the more intelligent part of the movie. It did more focus on the action aspect of it, which was great. It was a good 35-40% of the movie. But I feel like part of that part that you could have got the people that weren't just in it for for things beating the shit out of each other. I think you really missed the boat on that crowd. I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunity that they really could have had. But I'm hoping maybe word of mouth might help the movie, because I know a lot of people are loving it. So then again, if I went by the audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes, Grown Ups 2 has a 90% audience positive rating.
Well, let me say this. The original Austin Powers movie bombed in theaters and had a second life on home video.
Wrong there, Mark. The original didn't bomb in theaters. It actually did pretty decently considering its cost. It just wasn't like it was more of a cult kind of niche kind of movie. But then it blew up on home video. They got a sequel, and then they started making $200 million.
Well, that was where I was getting to, Mr. Concrete Harris. It did not do as well as it expected, and it not.
True. That's also not true, Mark.
Fine. It was a huge mega hit.
Look, here, the first one that came out the first movie that came out in 1999, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, came out.
The point that I was getting to was that the thing with these movies is, well, it can do pretty well in the theaters or maybe not so well in the theaters. A lot of times, because we're watching movies differently now, or watching TVs differently now, there's a lot of on-demand content out there. Movies can be successful over the long tail, as opposed to sort of the traditional way of looking at success, which is that opening weekend. So Pacific Rim, now that the word's gotten out about how good it is, and how much people are enjoying it, how much people like us think it's like the best movie of the summer. I'm hoping that over the long tail it is more successful. It's just hard to gauge that right now, and that's certainly not necessarily something that a studio touts. Let's give some credit where credit is due and talk about some of the performances here. I know Jeff and I have had a lot of fun quoting Idris Elba over and over and over again. Tonight we are canceling the apocalypse and all of that. But Mr. Cooper, what did you think of Idris Elba as the leader of the resistance, as it were?
Well, I think first I wouldn't put my hands on him, and second I wouldn't put my hands on him. Yeah, I thought he was pretty badass. He was the character that they really needed. He was that kind of, I don't want to say quite staunch, but he was that serious, that guy that really made everything run, that most everybody respected and listened to, and he really had a presence that made you want to listen to him, that it made you want the characters to want to listen to him, because, he felt like a guy that knew what the hell he was doing. I kind of liked him. I felt his performance was really good. I felt he had one of the stronger ones in the movie. It was a movie full of strong performances, so that's really saying something.
The last movie that I remember seeing him in was Prometheus, and other than that, I've seen him here and there. But the thing that because I was a huge fan of The Wire, Jeff and I had, fun poking each other the last time we did this podcast over which is he better in The Wire or Luther. But shut up. He's really the only one that I knew, because I don't watch Sons of Anarchy and I don't watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So it was fun to watch a movie where I don't really know who the actors are, and I can just see them as the characters that they're trying to play, as opposed to trying to remind myself that I don't know them from somewhere else. Which brings us to Charlie Hunnam as Raleigh Beckett. He's supposed to be the star of this thing besides Idris Elba. He's the hero that comes in and saves the day. How did he work for you, Jeff?
He worked
in that role.
He worked well in the role. The performance didn't blow me away, but I think he was just he was your traditional hero that you needed for the movie. He went through something pretty terrible. I like that he kind of started as a hotshot, and when he comes back, he's the hotshot is really the Chuck Hansen character, the young who's sort of the young golden boy. And I like that usually that onus is more on the protagonist. So I like that by that time, for Charlie Hunnam's character Raleigh, he had kind of already been through that phase and grown out of it, and he was generally a respectful, thoughtful individual. So I like that, and I liked how respectful and complimentary he was toward Mako, and that they don't have this kind of heat of rivalry. I like that he respects her and he puts his faith in her. I really enjoy the interplay they had. One interesting thing about Stacker Pentecost, originally that role was going to Tom Cruise, which I would have hated.
I don't know if I would have gone to see the movie had Tom Cruise been in the Idris Elba part. I want to talk about Rinko Kikuchi as Mako Mori and her relationship with Idris Elba. Again, I thought as the adopted daughter of Stacker Pentecost, I thought that added a layer to the movie that I necessarily wasn't expecting. I thought it was an interesting sort of explanation for some of the decisions that are made in the movie. I liked it a lot. She's an interesting character, and she's an interesting choice because normally the the female lead in a movie like this, we keep making a lot of comparisons to Transformers, which tells you how much this stuff has been, those movies have just been branded in our brains. But you look at the female lead of Transformers, and it's basically, a sex kitten, whatever the hell her name is. But it's Megan Fox, whose only role in this movie is to look hot, and she has no character whatsoever. And in a similar situation where you've got giant robots and monsters and shit, they instead give it to this woman who, she's not an unattractive woman by any means, but I would not exactly call her a sex symbol either. I thought it was actually a daring choice for the casting director to choose her, and I thought she played the character very, very well. I like her arc, as somebody who was so traumatized by the attack on her own hometown and having her parents killed and all of that, and then having to be thrown into this, wanting to be in this machine, and then when you get there, have kind of a meltdown about it. It was an interesting thing to watch her. Last two characters I wanted to, last three. The two scientists, Charlie Day as Dr. Newton Geisler, and Bern Gorman as Dr. Herman Gottlieb. Cooper, what'd you think of the two scientists and how they played to each other? They could have taken that so far over the edge to where it would not have been entertaining. They also, I noticed they definitely avoided the one scientist who was working with the aliens meme or trope. Nobody turned on them, thank God. I was thrilled to see that everyone stayed on the side of humanity in this movie. You didn't have the Bert character, I think his name is, from Aliens, who fucking turns on the human beings. But both of them just coming from two different points of view and then working together at the end to contribute to saving the day. I enjoyed that. What'd you think of it?
Oh, first I'm going to go back. Our main character, the guy from Sons of Anarchy, can't remember his name. I think it's bad with names.
Charlie Hunnam.
Charlie Hunnam. Thank you. Like I said, I'm bad with names. But I thought he did a good job. I felt his accent was weird. I couldn't place his accent. Like, it shifted. Or maybe that was just me, but I just thought that was weird. Rinko Kikuchi, I thought she did a great job. I was actually not really surprised she was cast, because this movie didn't really strike me as one that needed the sex kitten, because if it would have given us the sex kitten, I really felt like it would have just really, I don't want to say insult. Yeah, actually I do want to say it. I feel like it would have insulted the audience. You would have given us this movie, and then you have the sex pod over there. That doesn't fit. And the one thing I will say about the one was the first time they drifted, I felt that was really good. I wish they would have maybe, I don't want to say montage per se, but I wish they would have at least come back to that a little more, maybe showed them have a little more trouble with it, because, they had a trial by fire once that scene happened, but I really wish they would have maybe shown that they needed a little more, I guess, coaching up. I felt like that was got a little too quick, but that's just me. They did have a talk about it, and maybe that fixed it. As for our scientist characters, I liked what they did. I enjoyed it. I am so happy that they
another allusion to. Hang on, there was another allusion to Independence Day where yet another person mind melds with the alien.
Yeah, that was when you were talking about Independence Day. I'm like, yeah, when you think about it, what they did, it's like, yeah, mind melded with the alien. They did, quote unquote, kind of use the carcass, or they did use the bad guy to get to the mothership, more or less, and destroy it. But the scientists, I loved the relationship they had. They're kind of those bickering co-workers. They can't stand each other, but at the end of the day, they really do kind of care about one another. And I like the fact that they really helped, that they actually mattered in the movie. Instead of being just quirky side characters, they ended up being pretty much the thing that saved the day.
Or being eaten in a porta potty or something like that.
We have not gotten to the movie's true star and the true reason.
I was saving him for you. Hang on. I was saving him for you, Harris. Hang on. I want to let Robert finish, but I was absolutely saving the star of this movie for you, for the final thought on the cast and performances. So finish up, Robert, so Jeff can do his thing.
I'll make it brief. Well, it's bad at making things brief. But I I was really happy we didn't get the whole somebody betrayed the humans trope, because, that trope that's tired. Every freaking alien movie does that. Like, I enjoyed the fact.
My other favorite one is, they were betraying the humans because they were trying to save the aliens to weaponize them at a future date.
That too. Yeah, though I did kind of I knew that, halfway through the movie, when we kept following Charlie Day's character, I knew that this was going to be really big on the plot, because you don't just follow some random scientist, during the movie when you got action going on. I knew pretty much he was going to give the solution, and I did like it. I like the fact they didn't die either, because, for a while there, I thought they were both just going to die from frying their brains. But I
like the fact that he mind melds with the character early on, and and it doesn't go as well as he had hoped, and that there's a payoff later on. I like the fact that he went back to that again.
Indeed, I did enjoy that. It was quite nice. It's sometimes nice for the things not to work out with the character, because it makes you have to go back and do more.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the whole hero's arc, isn't it? All right, Jeff Harris, Ron Perlman, Hellboy himself, the star of this picture. What do you, Giro Diamo's favorite actor? Did you stay for the end credits, by the way? Did you stay all the way through?
Oh yeah.
Yes, it was actually a mid-credits stinger, but there is a little something extra at the very, very end of the credits. If you all stayed for that.
Yeah, I did. It was like a growl.
Yeah, it was a kaiju growl. I'm glad you stayed for that, Robert.
I always do.
The true tour de force of this movie was, of course, Ron Perlman, Guillermo del Toro's staple actor as Hannibal Chow, the black market kaiju organ stealer. Ron Perlman, I think he's one of this generation's greatest character actors. He might never win an Academy Award or anything, but he's a true talent, and he always plays such interesting, fun characters. He played the white supremacist vampire in Blade 2. He was Hellboy in the Hellboy movies. Vincent in the Beauty and the Beast television series. He's known for doing heavy makeup roles, and he has no shame, and I really just always enjoy the characters he does. He's so charismatic, and I like he had such great lines in delivery about the kaiju and what was he like? 1 cubic meter of crap can fertilize a whole field. It was perfect. Everything he said and did in this movie was freaking perfect to me, and the ultimate end for his character was even greater.
It was fun.
I was upset at first, and then when I saw that they went back, I was like, yes, you don't mess with Hannibal Chow.
Well, it was really funny. People were yelling out in the theater, "You can't kill Ron Perlman. Don't even try."
That's what I said. I was like, no, you can't kill Ron Perlman. Don't even try a movie. And then what do you know? You can't kill Ron Perlman.
All right, last words on this. Go to you, Robert. Anything that you felt needed mentioning? Anything that we've missed?
Oh, let's see. The first thing, when they first fight once Raleigh is on the with the rest of the pilots and stuff. The one where the Chernobyl and Crimson Typhoon get destroyed. Honestly, that kind of jerked my heart a little. It brought a tear to my eyes. Kind of like this says a lot about me. Like when I watched Godzilla Final Wars and Godzilla gets drilled through the chest and died. I kind of cried during that. when the robots one got burnt with acid and the crew got drowned and killed, and the other one they just fucking ripped the head off. That really hurt, deep down, because these were these awesome machines I was just waiting to see get kicked ass, and they were really built up quite well. And then they just got their asses kicked. Though honestly, if they were fighting the kaiju from the earlier in the movie, I think they would have been fine. But these ones had some tricks up their sleeve with the acid and all that. But it really just made me so sad to see them go. I know it's kind of like to see my heroes die. But I'm a big wimp. What can I say? the scene where we find out that the kaiju was pregnant, what made me think, I was thinking, and then I'm like, so I'm assuming this was part of the invasion fleet or something. Since it's pregnant, it is going to have the kaiju, and they're going to, I assume, populate the Earth with themselves and fuck shit up and then purge the world and then go on their merry way. I assume that was part of their invasion fleet, bring the pregnant ones. Then again, I was surprised that things could get pregnant.
It was also part of a plan to annihilate Charlie Day, Dr. Newton.
Yes. See, I didn't actually think about, I was like, I didn't think it was a two-way street until they mentioned it, and I'm like, well, he's fucked. But the movie overall, I really don't have any other quibbles. Like I said, I had a few. I've read some of the negative reviews, and I'm like, I don't quite agree. I feel like a lot of those negative reviews were people that either didn't want to like the movie or held something against it that it just wasn't going to have. So I don't feel like they really judged it on its merits. They judged it on what they wanted or what it didn't have.
No, I agree. Jeff, the last question I have for you, and then we're going to start to roll out of this podcast for the night, is that the big complaint that I've seen among reviewers, the ones that like the movie, ones that not the ones you were talking about before, who are for some odd reason demanding art house movies from Guillermo del Toro, is that not enough fight scenes. Oddly enough, the big complaint that I'm seeing from people is that they wish there had been more monsters and robots and more fighting, and not, it's weird because I've seen the exact opposite many, many times in movies like this, where there's too much fighting and not enough character development. Well, this time they spent a lot of times, making sure there were human beings in this movie instead of just special effects reels, and like a George Lucas movie, and and now what I'm seeing is people complaining that there was not enough fighting in this movie and too much human beings. What do you say to that?
It didn't. Look, I agree with Robert in that, I kind of wanted to see the Russian and the Chinese Jaegers do a little bit more, and because they look so cool and it looked like, and the pilots look so unique and interesting. I kind of wanted to see more out of them. But, that doesn't really break the movie. I was very satisfied with the movie. The movie had great pacing and it moved very well. And I think some movies, as of late, have gotten way too long, and it's become like getting through quicksand to get to the good stuff. The Lone Ranger was a lot like that. So I much prefer that, the movie have a tighter, 2-hour running time than just be a ridiculous 2.5 hours like Man of Steel and The Lone Ranger. So I probably prefer the movie as it is. Yeah, I could have probably used, maybe one more big fight scene to showcase the other Jaegers, but that's to me, that's a minor nitpick that doesn't really break the movie experience of how awesome this movie was for me.
Yeah, I would agree. To the people, my final point on this is to the people who are like, oh, well, I wish there had been more monsters and more fighting. None of that stuff matters unless it adds to the story. And I felt like the fights that you did see in the movie actually were, told a story. They were like chapters in a book, and they mattered. That's the important thing. The stuff you show on screen must matter. If it doesn't matter, well, you're probably a writer for the WWE. No, if it doesn't matter, then you're wasting time on film, and you're wasting the audience's time. And so what I think I loved best about Pacific Rim was it didn't waste my time. It told me a great story. There didn't seem to be a lot of wasted movement, as I say in wrestling, on film. It was just an all-around, the first real roller coaster ride of the summer that I didn't find myself being dissatisfied at any given time. So, this was, as far as summer blockbusters go, where robots and monsters are concerned, this one hit it out of the park for me. Okay. So that being said, that is the end of our Pacific Rim podcast. I want to thank Robert Cooper for manhandling his way into this. He held me at gunpoint, he did. said.
I just nagged you to death, and you were like, okay, shut up.
Like Jeff Harris, who's been wanting to do a podcast with me, for like the last year, just him and me, and and then Robert Cooper comes in and muscles in on his territory. How do you feel about that, Jeff?
I loved Robert's presence here. I think he really mixed it up. I think it, I'm happy he knows his stuff about mecha and anime and tokusatsu. So I was happy to hear that. I think Robert is welcome to anyone.
Fantastic.
As long as it's not Sam Mercati, I think we're pretty good.
That's good. Yeah, I know where the line is going. All right. So next, 2 weeks. Whatever the Monday after the 26th is, I guess that's 2 weeks from today, we'll be, Jeff and I will be back for the Wolverine. I already got my tickets for that. I'm going to take my wife. It's going to be date night to the Cinebistro. So that'll be the next, the Monday after that will be the next movie review podcast. So before then, what do you got going on there, Mr. Robert Cooper?
Let's see. It just came out yesterday, the Hammer of Doom news report, all things about heavy metal that you would ever want to read, care about, and all that stuff. I was actually at the top. I actually had the top billing on the music. So I don't know what happened to Sean, but I was so happy to see that. I got that. I'll be in the music top 5, which comes out tonight, where we're doing top 5 drummers, which should be plenty of fun because metal. Let's see. I'll be doing the music buy or sell this week. I'm in MMA Fact or Fiction. Let's see if I can get to a three fight winning streak. I'm already at 2. I'm pretty proud of that. Let's see, what else am I doing? Being 4-player co-op. And speaking of things that Stephen Randall does, I'll be doing his cooperative multiplayer podcast like I do every Tuesday night, and probably derailing the holy hell out of it because that's really what I do when I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay. You can also hear Robert Cooper and I review the new Black Sabbath album a week from tomorrow. And if you go back for the last month or so, it's been all Megadeth all the time. We did a 2-part Megadeth career retrospective, and we reviewed the new Megadeth album, Super Collider, all of which you can find in the MMA Music Zone or anywhere else where where Radulich and Broadcasting podcasts are posted, as I'm now using the player that shows all the shows that I've done, not just that particular one.
Yep. And the 3 beards.
And the 3 beards.
The 3 beards.
What's the 3 beards?
Well, let's see, the 3 beards. It's a morning show style show where we really just talk about anything and everything. Like for the past few weeks, we've really brought up Pacific Rim because the 3 beards, the 3 of us, we really love like comic books. We love science fiction and robots and stuff. So that's been brought up a lot. We usually, there's been one episode where they talk all about beer, and I screamed I had Mountain Dew because I didn't want to feel left out. The Clamato episode, which is everybody's favorite because I talk too much. But pretty much, go find us on iTunes, rate and subscribe, and www.facebook.com/the3beards. We have fun on there. If you post on there, we'll talk to you and shit. Totally. Oh, and we had a poll today. Who should play Batman next time? I vote Jeff the asshole.
I vote Idris Elba. All right.
Army Hammer.
So Army Hammer. Jeff Harris and I have reviewed Iron Man, Man of Steel, The Lone Ranger, Monsters University. The next is The Wolverine. That's what me and Jeff do. Of course, you can always hear Jeff on the 401 Ground and Pound radio show. Jeff, what else you got going on?
Okay, well, on Wednesday I'm shipping off to San Diego for the San Diego Comic-Con, so we'll be doing some coverage there. We have some big events lined up, so we hope to get some good coverage from that. You can check out my column this week at the MMA's 3Rs. So we have had some pretty big news, tons of injuries, sidelining, UFC fights on some big UFC cards. Some big new events were made. Anthony Pettis is now fighting Ben Henderson in a big rematch at UFC 164 in Milwaukee. So Comic-Con, MMA's 3Rs. Also, I saw The Conjuring, the new horror movie from Warner Brothers, from James Wan, the director of the first Saw movie. So I'll be having an early review up for that. And I I don't know if I'll be on the Ground and Pound radio show this weekend because I'll still be in San Diego on Sunday. But if I can make it on, I will. And, of course, it looks like Mark and I will be doing our next Movie Zone podcast for the Wolverine.
Yep. All right. There was no show this past Sunday because I wanted to watch Money in the Bank in peace. And I was exhausted. But you can check out a special.
I don't really think it was a show weekend. I think it was a good weekend to take a break.
Yeah, every once in a while you just need to recharge your batteries. But instead you can check out a special episode of the Ground and Pound radio show I did with Sam Mercati, where we talked about the life and times of Anderson Silva and his most recent loss to Chris Weidman, what it all means, and psychologically what's going on with this man. So check that out. It was a pretty fun hour of discussion. If you like the Man Cave podcast and you like the 401 Ground and Pound, then you'll love As the Two Meet and Form Giant Crazy Podcast Robot. All right, not so much.
You're the Wonder Twins.
That's right. Tomorrow night on The Long Road to Ruin, Sean Comer and Melissa Radulich will be joining me as we discuss the Twilight Saga. Yes, in defense of Twilight, 411 readers. Eat your hearts out.
That is going to be such a poor Sean.
That's right. 2+ hours of me defending the Twilight movies and my wife repeating over and over again, God, the books were so much better. So that'll be great.
Poor Sean.
Besides that, you can check me out on thecasualheroes.com. Recently did an MMA cast where we talked about UFC 162. Check me out on any one of their WrestleCasts and their inaugural movie cast. I should be on again this week discussing Money in the Bank, to which I have to say, fuck you, WWE, fuck you, Randy Orton. And for more on that, again, check out thecasualheroes.com. All right, so until we meet again, this has been the Summer Blockbuster Series. Be well, be safe, and behave.